Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and I'm going to be talking about g.l.o.w. Season 3, Episode 3. It's called Desert Pollen. So full spoilers for the episode as always, and I should mention that this review is sponsored by one of our patrons. Tim Neal sponsors these g.l.o.w. reviews, so thank you to him. So, this episode has a very tight thematic through line, I think, throughout. I really like how all the plots kind of fit into the same kind of mold of basically, I don't want to quite call it a midlife crisis, but there's a running theme throughout this of several characters dealing with their own body, their body image, and what they want out of life, and if they want the things that they're expected to want right now. And it varies a little bit character to character, of course. They all kind of have their own thing going on. We'll start with Debbie, I think, who perhaps gets the most time of the episode, and it all kind of stems out of Cherry wanting to have the girls work out more and be more dedicated because they're not showing up for practice or exercise or anything like that. And she kind of befriends this dance instructor, this showgirl, ex-showgirl person, and forces them all to go to this dance class, which is only a few hours after some of them have gotten in from partying the night before. And this kind of makes Debbie feel insecure. She's trying to do the ballet moves and the dance moves, and starts to feel very self-conscious about herself compared to the ballet dancers, and essentially bails after a little bit of dancing. And we see her in the rest of the episode refuse to go to lunch. She says she's not hungry. And then we see right after that she decides to, instead of taking the elevator, sort of jog up and down the stairs, or just up the stairs, instead of using the elevator as a ways of getting exercise. And I think a big part of this episode is when she runs into Gina Davis's character, who says she understands what she's doing, and she's like, I used to care about all this and cared about being a performer and that kind of thing, but then I transitioned full time into being someone behind the scenes. And I think what's interesting about her is that she's kind of very much what Debbie might be in the future, and she's very clearly here saying that, hey, I gave up the performing life, I gave up that part of me, and actually I'm much more satisfied in what I do now. There's even a joke where she's like, I get to eat Haagen-Dazs, and Debbie's like, what is that, a Dutch fellow? Just a fun little joke. But it's really nice because it kind of like it presents Debbie with this clear option, this clear thing where, hey, if your performing days are coming to an end, you have this, and like, you want to be a producer, you made a point of that, making that happen last season, and you're constantly saying that you want to be recognized as that more than one of the talent, if you will. And so she's presented with this from Gina Davis's character on a thematic level. And I mean, in fact, to the point where Gina Davis actually says to her, hey, if you ever want to think about anything, my door's always open. Not really saying anything outright, but clearly kind of implying that there might be a place for her at this casino, or something like that, that she might actually help her get a job of some kind in this side of the industry. And so that they've kind of, because they didn't hit it off in the best way when they first met, and perhaps that's because they are so similar, and that's kind of a typical people thing, right, and a character thing, is that sometimes when people are too similar to each other, they kind of oppose each other. So I thought it was interesting, and then later on, Debbie and Ruth are alone in the dressing room. This is after these two assholes have been in. I'll talk about that a little bit later. In fact, no, I won't talk about it later. I'll talk about it now, because this kind of ties into everyone's self-consciousness of the episode, because they come out of the dressing room, and these two guys that Sam and Bash have went to play tennis with, these two producers who put on a show, are very, very vulgar. They're all they're doing is sexualizing women in front of them. They're in the dress room with the ladies, and all they do is make sex jokes and talk about boobs and talk about all these kind of things. And they're just immediately, it's uncomfortable. As soon as they're in there, it's uncomfortable. The ladies are all trying to still be nice about it, but clearly they're all not happy. Debbie is invited to go and get drinks with Bash and them, and she, is mutters under her breath, almost not enough time for them to get out of the room before she's, no, I'd rather eat a dog's ass, or something to that effect. And so it's kind of pelling on the feeling that's, because all the ladies are all kind of feeling kind of tired. They're all sick of partying every night, and Melrose is frustrated because no one wants to do anything. and it's kind of that the overall feeling of the episode. But Debbie, when she's on her own, like Ruth tries to say, "Hey, do you want to get dinner together?" And she's like, "Nah, I'm not really feeling it." And Ruth's like, "No, you have to eat something." Ruth's paying attention. She's noticing what's happening, and she tries to cheer her up. She puts on this ridiculous headdress and starts dancing around, and it makes Debbie laugh, but it doesn't do enough. And she makes a comment about her shirt. It's like, "Oh, you're wearing a shirt that looked like my grandmother wore back in the Depression or something like that." And Ruth takes off her top and starts dancing around like a showgirl, jiggling her boobs around, and with this headdress on. It's this sort of thing when once Debbie turns around and sees it, she really starts laughing. And I think what's interesting about this is that obviously Ruth's going through a lot of her own stuff, but Ruth's not got her own plot in this episode. Ruth is here for Debbie's plot this episode. And Sam's kind of a similar thing. There's a little moment with Sam and Ruth at the start, but for the most part, again, Sam's plot here is not one of the main plots of the episode. She's here for Debbie, and it's this idea that she's trying to remind Debbie that she doesn't have to concern herself with all these things, and to kind of relax. And it's interesting because it's almost like we're finally seeing in a really big way why these two were friends in the first place. There's hints of it throughout the episode. When Ruth says, "Well, why don't you come to this dance thing? It'll be like old times." And it is almost like old times for a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds even in the ballet room, and then here she does make her laugh and convinces her to come and get dinner. And she does it by being ridiculous and being this friend. And of course, the big moment here as well is that Sam walks in and sees this, and we get this awkward moment. In fact, my favorite little touch in this scene is Sam's covering his eyes once he's realized, and Ruth's kind of standing there with her hands over herself. Sam says, "I was going to apologize for those two assholes, but and then he says, is she covered?" And Debbie says no, but she says it with this really weird smirk in her face that really made me laugh. Where she has actually forgotten anything that was bothering her. She's just lost in the moment, and Ruth's achieved this. Ruth has actually successfully brought her out of her slump, and she takes her to dinner, and she's befriended someone in the kitchen, so they actually get a little private table in the kitchen, and they get a couple of burgers, and Debbie tucks in after a little bit of convincing. She talks about how she's always had this idea that she has to have this perfect body, this pressure that she's always felt. Ruth's like, "No, this is silly. You don't have to feel that way. You're not you don't have to compare yourself to a showgirl. You're not a showgirl. You're a wrestler and a businesswoman and a mum, and all these things." And try and talk sense into her, and sure enough, Debbie eats the cheeseburger. She bites into it, and she's like, "Oh my god, this is so good. I'm so hungry." And yeah, and then there was a little funny joke where Ruth's like, "Oh yeah, I'm hungry too," and Debbie's like, "But you were at the buffet table for hours." It's like, "Yeah, and I'll have ice cream before I go to bed probably." And Debbie's like, "Oh, now you're just being a bitch." But no, it's a fun scene, and it's them bonding, and you think, oh, maybe she has accepted that she is moving on to a new part of her life, that maybe this is accepting her. Like I say, that's why I jokingly refer to this as a midlife crisis early on. Not that I think this pressure is new or just something that's unique to this part of her life, but I think the idea that she's lost it is definitely feels midlife crisisy to me. But of course, at the end of the episode, she has this relapse essentially when she gets the videotape in the mail. It arrives earlier on, but she finally opens it at the end and watches it, and sure enough, it's a home video of her son, and we just hear Mark saying, "Hey, wave to mummy," and say hi. And it's interesting to me that this moment inspires what she does, because the episode ends with Debbie going into the bathroom and making herself vomit. And not only that, she actually ends the episode looking in the mirror with a smile on her face. She actually smiles before it hits to the credits. And it's not like this is a happy moment. This is a moment we're clearly not supposed to be like, "Hey, yeah, that was a great thing you did there, Debbie. This is unhealthy. This is a bad thing." And I think it's interesting to analyze why this moment specifically triggered her changing her mind and wanting to sort of take back, if you will, the food tray, or take out, I suppose is a better term, but you know what I mean. And I think the way I was kind of reading this, at least from the scene, and you can disagree and tell me in the comments what you think of this, but the way I kind of read this, and obviously we'll get to Cherry's subplot, which kind of neatly thematically, more so than anyone else's plot, ties into this, is that she sees her son and she's missing that. We know she's feeling guilty about this from the last episode. It was a theme last season as well, but she feels guilty about not being there all the time. Other mothers are, she feels other mothers are quote unquote better than her, or that's what she feels deep down, even if she's not willing to admit that. And I think, to me, her seeing her son like this and seeing that her son is growing up without her, it's making her feel like a bad mother. And I think to her, that means she feels that she needs to at least be good at what she was before. That she needs to be better at everything else then, because if she's not going to be a good mother, she has to be good at what she always was. At least that's the way I was kind of reading it. Because I think that's what she feels when she looks at that tape. I think she feels guilt. Because before, because in the dinner scene, when Debbie brings this up, so when Ruth brings this up, sorry, one of the things she sells on is that you're a mum, like, so. And actually, no, Debbie says that. It's not Ruth says that. Ruth says all the other stuff, but Debbie says, "And I'm a mum. Mums are allowed to eat cheeseburgers," kind of thing. And Debbie here changes her mind. She decides that that's not the case, and it's almost like for a moment she's essentially deciding that she's not really a mum. She doesn't feel like a mother, not really. And obviously this is the sort of thing where once she sees her child again, I don't imagine this will stick forever, but that's how she feels right now. It's how she feels in this moment, and it's a little bit sad. It's a sad scene. That she feels the need to do this, and I think what's telling about it. It's one thing when you get a scene like this where it's a young 20-something just trying to make her name, doing this to try and stay skinny. I think it almost hurts more when someone who is this age, who is supposed to be mature and is who you imagine should feel more confident in life and feel like they've had enough experience that they're more sure of who they are. But she isn't. She's still just as screwed up as what you would think of this being like a 20-something, or even a late teens kind of thing, and that pressure's not went away. And it's not like it's not. I don't think it's saying that Debbie's particularly screwed up. I think the point is that no, tons of people are going through this. It's all maybe not all ages, but enough of their life. Like this is not something that just goes away because you're over 25. And I think that kind of hits in this scene, and I think her being happy she's just done what she's done, and she's not even questioning it in that final moment, that final glance she has. It's really quite sad, and you hope the arc of this is, and I do hope the arc is. I hope this arc is, if this is the last season, and I don't know if it will be, and I hope it's not, but if the arc of this season is like some of the characters accepting who they are and who they want to be, which is what I think the theme of this episode is more than anything else, but specifically with Debbie and a couple other characters, about their own body specifically and what they want for their body. And it feels like Debbie's in a really rough place right now, and it's almost like she's bouncing around and not really knowing exactly what she wants in life. And she's defaulting to this almost because she can't be a good mother. That was the way I was reading it. But again, give me your own thoughts in the comments. And of course, next episode might add more to this, add more layers to this, and it'll make it clearer in my head exactly what she's going through. But that was the way I read this scene. And let's talk about Cherry. Cherry, of course, we know she's been trying to get pregnant, and her husband's like making her take the temperature tests and all the rest of it to find out when she's ovulating. And she has a conversation with the dancer after the class with the group, where she finds out that the dancer hasn't been actually performing for a while because she had a kid. Her child's almost 15 months old, and she had to give up about 4 months into the pregnancy. She thought she had another month in her before she was showing, and she could still do it. But she says she literally was bleeding on stage and had to give up. And she's been trying to get back in, but they keep telling her that she's not ready. There's other tryouts in a couple of months, so she might get back in. But you have this look in Cherry's face, and Cherry's story here is interesting for me because this is purely about just her deciding what she wants, and she ultimately admits to her husband that she doesn't think she actually wants to have a baby. She doesn't think she wants to do that to her body. She wants to continue with her career. She wants to still be a performer, a stunt woman, whatever it may, a wrestler, whatever it may be. And because she takes her job seriously, we've seen that she's kind of the ringleader. She's the drill sergeant, if you will, who really wants to get them all into shape and make sure they put on a good show. It's this kind of heartbreaking thing where he wants a family. You know, he gets very emotional. He cries and says he just wants a family, and she's like, I think this is what I want. And he's like, does it matter what I want? And she's like, I don't know. And it's a really heartbreaking thing because this is exactly the sort of thing that might just end the relationship, because he wants this future, he wants a family. He says that there's been multiple times in the past where he's wanted to do this, but she's like, no, wait until I've done this job, wait until this 6 months at this TV show are over, wait until the deadline keeps moving because she keeps getting more work that she wants to do. And they bring up the fact that she's had a miscarriage before, and she just doesn't think this is right for her. And it's this hard realization. It's almost like there was just this assumption that she's supposed to do this, and she's realizing for herself that she doesn't want it. And I think, unlike Debbie's story, which is very murky because it's this dealing with it, long after the fact, and her deciding what she wants out of life. And it's not so much that I think Debbie's regretting having a kid. I don't necessarily think that, but she's definitely confuddled. That's a really cute word to use in a fairly serious topic, but she's definitely going through a really weird time trying to decide what she wants with her life now. And I think Cherry isn't as complicated, actually. It's actually much more straightforward. It's a hard realization. It's one that's very emotional, but it's really quite simple. She's just realizing that that's not what she wants for herself. And there's the only complication here is that her husband does. And he gets emotional. He leaves because for a long time she's been saying we'll do this, and now she's admitting that she doesn't want to. So he feels like he's been kind of strung along for a long time, and he gets upset and leaves. And she wants to try and she's upset that he's this upset, and she wants to try and make it better, but she can't not be honest about it anymore. And the beautiful thing about the scene is that you don't really think either of them are villains in the scene. They're both very emotional. They both come off as sympathetic, but ultimately this is her choice and it's hers to make. So it's a really strong scene. Cherry and her husband, I don't necessarily think are the characters that I have thought of in the past as having the standout scenes, but this was actually a pretty great scene. So that was really solid stuff. Elsewhere in the episode, I'll mention Sam briefly. He goes to play Tess, like I said, and it does feel like he's upset after the fact that it was more of a they stopped to chat to them after every single point in the game. And he asked Bash to afterwards keep playing because he wants to work up a sweat. And then after the fact, he gets really angry first of all because Bash wipes the floor with him because he's just not quick enough to keep up. And so again, this is kind of why I was saying midlife crisis, because Sam's kind of feeling, obviously it's inspired by Ruth saying in last episode that he was too old for her. And he even seems to want to try and give up smoking because she specifically said he smoked too much. And he doesn't quite throw away all of his pack, but he clearly wants to try. So that's basically Sam's thing for the episode. But I wanted to mention it because it ties into the themes of what's going on in the episode with everyone else. That he's kind of going through the same thing. Obviously, it's not the same pressure on him as everyone else, but he's definitely feeling his age, and it ties into what's going on. So that's good. Likewise, again, another small one. Tammy and Sheila go to an acting class. They don't go to the ballet thing. They go to an acting class, and this acting instructor, he tells Tammy off for adding a little bit of ad-libbing at the end of her little monologue that she does in front of the class, and he says, no, it's it's a character. You're supposed to be the character. You're not supposed to put yourself into it. That's not the point of acting. And okay, and that's fine. Like, honestly, that makes sense to me. to an extent, depending on the character, that makes sense. And Sheila goes up next, and it's very funny because Sheila kind of forces her way on to be next because this other guy puts his hand up and she just kind of stares him down to get on. But she says her monologue, and the coach says, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "Well, I read all the lines." And he says, "Sure, but there's you're not doing it with the right performance, the right emotion, or whatever." And she's like, "Well, this is me. This is what I would put into it." And he does have a really awful line here where he says, "Well, whatever you are is wrong," or something to that effect. And Sheila gets upset by this and storms out. So again, it's this idea of the pressure and the expectations for what specifically men, I think, what men want women to be, and obviously there's the slight role reversal with Sam in this case, and which is the funny thing is that Sam's is actually quite funny because Sam, you know, as much as I'm saying it's comparable, is definitely not equal because Sam, like, literally all he's fighting is his own bad habits and getting a bit older, right? Which sure sucks, but it's not the same pressure that are on the ladies, not by a long shot, and you know, so Sheila here feels like she's being belittled, and Sheila refuses to bend herself to what she's supposed to be. You know, hence her whole get up, hence that she's dressed the way she is and has been the entire show. She has this persona, and that's what she is. That's who she wants to be, and when that's called out as being something she shouldn't be, it upsets her. And then likewise, tying into the idea of them changing and getting older, Tammy's having health issues because she can't bend over. Her back is going out, and she makes Sheila to promise not to tell anyone, and then she'll see a doctor when the show's over in a couple of months, which seems like a very bad idea. She can't bend over and pick up her bag. So, again, all this stuff, it all ties in nicely. I mean, obviously, Tammy has a little bit of the getting old thing. I think Sheila's is maybe the more important one in the sense that it ties into the expectations and what people want you to be versus what you actually are, and are you proud of what you are, which is very clearly something that Debbie is struggling with in this episode, and Ruth seems to actually be better at it. Although Ruth, of course, is guilty of not admitting that she maybe has feelings for Sam, and we probably should mention that she did get her room moved to be further away from Sam, and claims that it's because the pollen from a tree out of her window is why she asked to move. And Sam, this is where the title comes from. Sam just goes, "Yeah, that desert pollen, yeah." So no, delivery's perfect. So I mean, that's basically what we get of them. All in, of course, him walking in, her being topless, which obviously has the added effect of we know that he's into her, and we suspect that she feels for him as well, even if she's not willing to admit it. So yeah, so that stuff's good. And of course, I left the comedy subplot till the end because, and it does tie into the themes of the episode, but it's also just a really funny plot where Melrose drags Jenny to the casino for a drink and sees a guy she likes, and she sends Jenny away so she can snag him for herself. He comes over, and after like a couple of lines of flirting, says, "Oh, we can, you know, we should probably discuss rates before," and she excuses herself and talks to Jen and says, "Oh, he thinks I'm a prostitute. He thinks I'm hot enough that he wants to pay for it. This is great." So she just says, "No, we'll discuss rates after." And he's like, "Okay then, let's go and get a room." And when we come back to them later, you know, they finish having sex. A lot of nudity in this episode, by the way. Between Annie and then this scene, Melrose is topless, and then this dude gets out of bed and he's just full frontal, dick's hanging in the wind. Something for the ladies, on you go. And then the joke comes where he's like, "Okay, we didn't talk about it beforehand, but I think 200 would be fair." And she's like, "Yeah, it's more than fair." And he's like, "Okay then, do you have cash on you?" So the joke here obviously is that he's a prostitute and he was expecting Melrose to pay him, and she's offended because she because she's like, "Well, I don't pay for sex. You think I need to pay for it?" You know, and again, it's this idea of her or the episode, the idea of like their confidence and their self-consciousness like biting them. And this is something that obviously makes her feel self-conscious. And it's a very funny scene because he's naked the whole time and he's arguing that he's got a pimp, so he has to get money off of her. She owes him money, and she's like, you know, no chance. It was a very funny bickering scene. I was laughing a lot throughout this, and it's not even a new joke. I'm sure I've heard this joke before, where, you know, both people think the other one's a prostitute kind of thing, or both people think the other. You know what I mean? Like I've seen this double prostitute kind of idea before. But no, really amusing, and it gave Melrose a fun little subplot. And I like how we're kind of rotating some of the characters around for the subplots, because obviously we had a Britannica subplot last episode. This episode we didn't, but we had a Melrose subplot instead. You know, we're kind of rotating through the cast a little bit. Obviously, Debbie, Sam, and not Annie. Annie was a character on Community. Debbie, Sam, and Ruth, of course, always seem to get their fair share, but the rest of them we get to rotate through a little bit. So yeah, no, everything was thematically very well linked, you know, to an extent. Like everyone, it was about their self-image or their self-consciousness, and kind of the hits they're taking in terms of that from people around them, and trying to be happy with themselves and struggling and feeling that doubt. And that was very much going on through the whole episode, and how they're all hit with this in different ways. So no, I thought it was very tight in that sense, and yeah, I'm going to see. I probably thought it was the best episode yet. Actually, I'd say that. I'd say this is the best episode yet, and I'm looking forward to episode 4. So thank you very much for watching or listening. I appreciate it. You can let me know in the comments below what you thought of the episode. Like and subscribe. Get me on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates, or you can get me on Twitter at Wibble89. You can also go over to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv if you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, everything we do on this podcast feed, the other podcast feeds, all the stuff on the YouTube page. Go to patreon.com/mailedfuzztv and you can support us for as little as $1 per month and keep the content coming. Of course, there's higher tiers as well, in which you get to sponsor a TV review series, much as Tim Neal does for this. So go have a look and see what's on offer. And yeah. Otherwise, that's me. So thank you very much for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Remember that Mindhunter Season 2 is coming this week. Me and Connor will be reviewing that. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?